Hey, it's Joe West from the West Barn with
Mike Shimshack.
Tonight we have Jason Miller on all the way from Minnesota. Correct, Minnesota?
Yep, in Minneapolis here.
He was a former Nashville resident, and we want to welcome him to the show. And, welcome both of you. We're back from break. It's 2021 officially, so congratulations. We were out of 2020. Good news for all.
Thank God.
We made it.
But we were really we want to preface this discussion. I've been knowing Jason a while on my Facebook timeline. We've talked back and forth about some interfaces via chat and microphones, and he's an audio engineer and mixer that moved to Nashville. I think in 2010 you moved to Nashville.
Fall of 2010.
And you stayed till 2014 before you moved back to Minneapolis.
Exactly. Yeah.
And more than anything on our podcast, we really want to encourage people to follow their passions. We want people to do what it is they're called to do. Whatever you do, we want you to do it well. We want you to celebrate it. But Jason left the music business. He had had enough, and he walked away from the music business. Who knows if it will call him back? That's the way the music business is, right? You could be back in music with the biggest hit of 2022.
People say that.
But we've all thought about it. So I thought, man, wouldn't it be cool? Because I don't know about, maybe I'll just speak for myself here. Over the years of 30 years, I've considered getting out of the music business. And I've almost I almost wouldn't tell my friends about it. I almost would act like I was a bit of an alcoholic, and it was like I didn't want to talk about my alcohol with my friends. But Jason's been working in the music business and has worked with artists like Prince, Brian White, The Weekenders, and was working at Paisley Park whenever he went back to Minneapolis. So, he's working at a high level in the music business, seriously pursuing the craft. I would see him come up on my timeline. He was always a guy with something intelligent to say about a post in regards to audio. He's one of those guys that shows up, and he's on my radar. And then I find out, then I see him painting. And I'm like, oh, that's cool, man. He bought a power sprayer. And I'm thinking he's like me, like on the weekend, he got a pressure washer and he's doing the porch. But no, he left the music business and now is full-time, headlong into painting, but doing it with a passion. You could tell that it's something he's pursuing and loves. So that is what it's all about. So we're all about that. But we want to talk about that. I think this feels to me, and I don't know if I'm different than everyone else, but it feels to me like a topic that people don't want to talk about in the music business. We never sit around with each other and talk about leaving the music business. But each of us have thought about it. We want to know what led you to that and what your rationale was and what made you pull the plug and what that must have been like to make that decision.
Right on.
And welcome to the show.
Thank you for inviting me. Very thoughtful of you. This was the fourth time I quit, though, by the way. This is not like my first time out. I've left before, never to come back, and then I came back. So this was time number 4, and I'm so positive this is the last time. Like I've reached escape velocity this time. I'm out. I guess honestly, when like you said, I was in Nashville from 2010 to 2014. I'm originally from here, Minneapolis, Minnesota area. I went to Nashville 2010, did a lot of cool things down there that I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit. When I came back here in 2014, I was good and out of the music business then. I came back here not being in it, intending to not be in it. Life circumstances led me back here. I was excited to be back here, and I was just like, I don't know, I've done sales stuff for, what do people do when they leave the music business? I don't know. Sales maybe is perhaps one thing because you don't necessarily need a particular education. So I just thought, I'm young, like I'm ready to crush it. I'm ready to do what somebody wants me to do. Like, let's just do it. So I kind of poked around there a bit. I was helping my dad. He's a pretty darn successful handyman in my hometown. I would do a bit of work for him and kind of some other gigs. And then just not shortly after I moved back, maybe a month or two after I moved back here, right connection, right time, I just ended up out at Paisley Park installing a new Pro Tools system in Studio A for Prince. And after installing that, his guy asked me, he's like, do you do you know how to like use Pro Tools and stuff too? And that's what I did. I mean, I was an engineer, like absolutely. And I was like, yep, sure do. And he's like, cool. Can we call you sometimes? Yeah, you sure as heck can. And then they're like, cool, we need a Pro Tools guy. Neat. So then really maybe like a week or two later is when they started hitting me up. He was going to be working on some stuff, and he cut to tape pretty much always at that time. That would have been 2014. And he was going to start recording a new project, and the engineer was going to be, you know who Booker T. Jones is, the musician, Booker T and the MGs. His son, Booker T. Jr., was going to be engineering, and he's a tape guy. Well, like right around the time that they hit me up, I was going to be the Pro Tools arm of his, you know, tape machine thing, helping with that. He just like died suddenly right then. I think it was like a heart thing or something, but that all just happened like right at the same time. So they kind of just regrouped, and ultimately I just became their on-call person, sort of setting up whatever stuff they needed in the studio to get going. I would set up the tape machine, get it loaded with new tape, set up the studio for Prince, get everything all dialed, get the sounds all dialed, get everything patched so that he could just come in, do his thing. And then I'd usually come back the next day or shortly thereafter, and I would transfer whatever he recorded to tape to Pro Tools. So that's what I was doing there, and was just kind of doing that on call up until he passed away. And then shortly after that all happened, and they wanted to open the Paisley Park up as a museum.
Let me stop you there. What was that like? I mean, was Prince like, how was he in the room? Was the a force in the room? Were you like didn't know what to do with yourself? What was that like being around Prince?
Oh, I mean, it was exactly like what you're thinking. Like you're thinking it's just a whole different experience. It's very surreal. You're totally, all of the above. People ask, you know, like, I hear he's pretty short. It was pretty short? And it's like, honestly, that I never noticed, like in the room, probably partially because he was wearing like 4-inch heels, but also because he was just an enormous presence. Like when he's in the room, it's just like, whoa, okay. But he was, you know, pretty chill generally. That was sort of like his demeanor. Like he sort of operated down here, but just had high expectations for things.
And was he, I mean, was that a rewarding experience? Did you walk away kind of feeling like you had met a hero and he had let you down, or did you feel like it was a good experience?
It was the most amazing experience of my audio career, the time that I spent at Paisley Park and doing stuff for him. Sometimes he was around, sometimes he wasn't. But that was after I had done the Nashville thing, after I'd been there for 4 years and learned how the Nashville machine works and how a lot of people operate down there and the whole system for kind of making records and assembling things and how it is sort of an assembly line and everything. And Prince just worked in a whole different way. I mean, that dude, like I would set up drums, bass, a guitar, his keyboards, his drum machine, a vocal mic, mic up the piano. Everything would be set up and ready to go. And I would load fresh tape and make sure that all the levels were cool. And then I would piece out, and he would record himself overnight doing all of those parts, no click track or anything. He would just start, oftentimes literally with the drum kit, no click track. It would just be like roll tape, walk into the drum room, tick, 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 and he would play drums to a song in his head, no click track, the whole arrangement, you know, all the crash cymbals that accent certain things, he knew all of it. And he would just lay the drums down, start to finish, until it was right, probably the first take. I wasn't there. I don't know.
That had to be wild showing up the next day and just like listening to what he did the night before.
Okay, so there was one time that I got to stick around. It was an interesting night. I ended up watching The Godfather in its entirety that night in the Studio A lounge while I was just waiting for stuff to happen. But I went out there, got everything set up, and then I was just sitting, waiting. And he called me into the control room, which didn't normally happen. He just wanted to make sure everything was set up, cool. And he just said, you know, I forget exactly what he said, but he suggested that he just wanted the room for a second. He wanted me to stick around. And I want to say it was about an hour or so later, I got called back in the room. And in that time period, he laid, I mean, the track was probably, let's just call it 4-ish minutes long. He laid down drums, or was it maybe just a drum machine? I think it was just a drum machine, bass, 1 or 2 guitar tracks, a synth track, a lead vocal track, and like 4 or 6 stacked background vocal tracks for essentially a demo, which turned out to be a different song. He was working on Judith Hill's album at the time. I don't know if you guys know who Judith Hill is, background singer out in LA. She's had her own musical career. She's done pretty well. She's amazing. Anyway, they were working on a record then, and what he laid down that night, I remember it because he had me transfer that right after he did it, morphed into a song called As Trains Go By on her album. It might be the first song on that album, but it was different. Like the groove is the same, and some of the elements that he recorded that night are in there, but like the main song is completely different. The lead vocal, the background vocals, that stuff is all gone. It's morphed into something different.
What a wild, like, you heard things that people will never hear. You know, it was just like ideas and sketch pads, but every morning you got to sort of be the only person maybe that heard some of that Prince stuff. It's pretty
Yeah, just kind of seeing that process. And also just like, I don't know, like, you know how it is in the studio. You get pretty heady about like the microphones that you want to use and where you're going to put them and where everybody's going to be and how isolated it's going to be. And I'm going to put these 14 mics on the drum kit and have all these different room mics and go through these and all of just these things that you're like, oh, I got to do all this. This was the opposite experience. Everything was like super, super simple, super, super straightforward. Some of the mics were like mismatched and it was just random cables, like whatever we could find. The studio's in like partial disrepair. And it was more just about the tracks. Like, and I mean, we're distorting stuff, we're overloading stuff. There's so much stuff that's just kind of like wrong. But ultimately, it's just like, listen to it. Does it sound rad? Yes, it does. So.
Okay, I just had to know. Go on. You were talking about how then you they asked you to maybe stay on. You were saying.
Yeah. So
after he passed.
The folks who run Graceland were running operations out there for a while, and they got the museum up and going, and I helped them out in various capacities, just because I was the last person to really do kind of like tech stuff in the studio when he was still around and know how things were connected. And I had connections to a lot of former engineers there. Like, I just kind of happened to be a pretty decent person to help them sort out the studios and the recording equipment and the audio equipment, just whatever's there. So I kind of helped them in the archives team a lot in that capacity. Did a couple of recording things out there sort of as needed. And so I've been doing that for a few years. And, you know, as a freelance engineer, as like pretty much everybody is, like, how many people actually have career jobs at studios anymore where they're just like a full-time employee? I mean, that's almost non-existent, right?
Right.
Almost. There's some, not that many. So this looked like a pretty good opportunity for me. When you're freelance, you're always looking for opportunities, right?
Oh yeah.
This seemed like a pretty good opportunity. It seemed like something that was worth cultivating. So I tried to kind of play along with them the best I could and be as valuable as I could to them, do as much research as I could, and just make all those connections. So that's how I was hustling for a couple of years. I was doing other audio gigs, doing other freelance things, managing another studio in town. But that was kind of my primary thing. And
this whole time you're thinking it's audio all the time for you. Were you conflicted at this point? Were you thinking about, man, I'm not sure if this is going to cut it?
Yeah, I mean, you're always thinking that, right? Like, isn't everybody kind of always thinking you're not sure?
See, this is the point. Go ahead, Mike.
No, I was going to say that's the music business. I think Jason's right.
That is it, is that you're always sort of self-doubting yourself, wondering if you should be in it. But we don't necessarily share this with one another. You know, it's not a point that we necessarily bring up in conversations with the other creatives.
Yeah, so I'm not generally like a feelings-driven person. I'm more of a rational, thought-driven person. So I would often just sit and look at it like, wow, the audio industry sure has changed a lot in the last 30 years. People, you know, technology was so different 30 years ago. People, you know, needed a lot more stuff. You needed more people. You needed more middlemen. And then I think like, cool, I really need to do this for like the next 30 years or so. Like I need to, that's the long-term plan. We can't just be hustling to like figure out what the next week is. Like ultimately, I'm going to be doing this for 30 years. What's the technology look like now? What's going to happen over the next 30 years? I'm a recording engineer, pretty decent at it. Did a number of production things, was pretty okay at that too. But ultimately, I'm not a songwriter. I'm not a musician. I'm not a content creator. I'm a content editor. I edit other people's content and help with that. And as valuable as that can be sometimes, you know, most content creators have the tools that they need to record their content. And for, you know, varying degrees of results with that. But let's be honest, I've heard a lot of musicians that have, technically speaking, no idea what they're doing with their DAWs and their equipment that bang out really cool sounding stuff. Sort of like Prince. Like that's sort of what it comes down to. Like he was on this uber level in this multi-million-dollar studio with this SSL console and this tape machine and like all of this stuff. But ultimately, he knows just enough to be dangerous. The only reason he needs me is because he's not going to go mic his drum kit. You know, he needs somebody to do that sort of stupid stuff. But otherwise, he did it all himself, and he would prefer it that way. To have, like, if he was able to literally do everything, he just would have. And I think that's great. I think that's a great thing. That's empowering for musicians and content creators. And now with, you know, you get yourself a little Apollo interface and whatever DAW you want and a couple microphones, and you can do it all yourself. Yeah. And that's like, people like me are just not needed. So I just think like, it's already tough now. It's already a struggle. What's it going to be like for the next 30 years? So I was always looking for like, what is the thing that I can slide into to have some sort of a job security? And as much as I tried plugging away, you know, finding something outside of the music business, I think one of the tricky things is it gets tough, especially like as you get older. And that was the other thing too, is I thought like, I was 32 last year when I decided to split and start the painting biz. I thought like, maybe let's just say I can hustle for another 10 years. Like, let's just say I can really grind away and kind of weave and sort of make it work. What if everything falls apart then? And I'm in my 40s. Like, how do you start over then? And then in my, like, how do you, and I see it just like people my parents' age, people who are in their 50s or in their 60s who are not quite ready to retire, and they're getting, you know, laid off from jobs. And it's like, man, they like did all sort of the right things and have like real jobby jobs, and they're getting laid off at 55 and they don't know what they're going to do for the next, you know, 5, 7, 8 years. And I don't know. I just started looking at that and I'm like, is it really worth this? And ultimately the answer became no, when they made me a job offer that I just thought wasn't up to what I was worth.
This is Paisley Park. They offered you a position to
which I'd been cultivating that for a few years. I'm like, man, we got to make this connection. And to their credit, I mean, they've always been very kind to me and they've treated me as if I was an asset to them, and it's all great. But ultimately they have, you know, a business model and they've got things that work, and they try their best to incorporate me into that business model. And I just thought, you know, it's just not going to cut it for me. I think I can do better doing something else. So it was really just, that was when it happened for me the 4th time. That's when I quit.
And was that just like were you at peace with it? Was it heartbreaking? Yes. So it wasn't like a breakup with a girl and you're a mess for 3 weeks.
Right. Big relief, right?
Well, people honestly, like when I kind of like told people like, all right, I'm out. I mean, certain reactions are like, man, you all right, bro? And it's like, yeah, actually, like I tell people, I wasn't angry. I wasn't sad. I wasn't bummed. I wasn't frustrated. I was just done.
Yeah.
I was just like, you know, I had done this. There's nothing that I look back and think if I had just done this better or differently, you know, maybe I'm just like, I poked at it every way that I possibly could. I rode that bull as long as I could. And it was fun. I had a lot of great times. I had a lot of great experiences, met a lot of cool people, learned a lot. But now it is just time to do something else.
It helps that you had something you were really passionate about, something that you wanted to go do, right? I mean, if you didn't have anything, it would have been really rough. So you didn't have. I got it. Okay.
So here's the thing.
You had the painting thing going on.
Yeah. Well, I told you my dad is a handyman, and that's something he started in his 40s. Actually, he worked for a different company, doing blue collar stuff, and then he kind of realized. I mean, he knew he had a knack for this, but he'd never put the pieces together, started his own business. He did start his own business in his mid 40s, maybe his late 40s actually, and he's made a really, really successful handyman business. He's done really well for himself. He owns a big ass RV now. Those guys travel. They do whatever they want. Like, this is a guy who grew up dirt poor on a farm. I mean, the whole world figured, like, you're never going to amount to anything. You're just like, that's what you are. Not like a super educated person, didn't go to post high school education or anything like that. He has done damn well for himself just by working hard and being good at, trades and that sort of a thing. So I've helped him off and on over the years. I've been building stuff out in his shop since I was a kid. I just, those kinds of things I get. And it was always just a means to an end for me. It was something I had to do just to keep going. You got to make some money. All right, we'll work for Dad for a while. And so at this point, when I decided to quit for a fourth time, I just thought, he's always said for years, even though he's always been very supportive of what I do, he's just always said, there's a lot of money doing the handyman thing. And I'm just like, man, I know it's just not for me. I don't want to go into people's crappy bathrooms and fix their crappy. Yes, there's money in it, like no disrespect at all, but it's just like, ugh. I don't want to do that. But anyway, I just kind of snapped and I just thought there is money in it and I'm ready to make some freaking money. Like I'm going to do it. I'm going to figure out how to do it my own way. So that's the plan. So when I quit, I thought, sweet, I'm going to be a handyman. I'm going to figure out how to do it my own way. And that's the deal. I was at peace with it. A couple of days later, I'm poking around on YouTube and I thought I forget what I was looking for exactly, but I just wanted to brush up on some painting thing. No pun intended there, but I'll take it. And the first video that I stumbled upon was this guy who calls himself the Idaho Painter. And he's got his YouTube thing has exploded. I forget what exactly the first video was, but this guy was a professional painter. His name is Chris Berry. He's out in Idaho. And he was showing some just like professional painting thing. And of all the things that I'd done with my dad, I thought painting was like the one thing that I'm actually pretty darn good at, and I enjoy it. It's very satisfying to paint a wall. It looks crappy, now it looks good, and those kind of skills. And just getting in the zone. It's actually a lot like mixing. We can get into that in a second. But I thought, okay, that's neat. And I watched another couple of videos, and I thought, man, screw being a handyman, where like you have to have a million different tools, so much knowledge about all kinds of different parts about houses and old houses and new houses and ins and outs of all kinds of different things. You got to get your contractor's license. You got to do all this kind of stuff, really. I'm like, screw all of that. People will actually pay good money to just like, all you have to do is paint. You just focus on that one thing. It just never occurred to me before that I could be a painter and just paint houses, paint trim, paint doors, paint cabinets, all those kinds of things. I could just do that, which I find enjoyable. And now I'm watching this, and this guy is doing it, he's crushing it, and he's showing other people how to do it well. And I thought, damn it, that's what I'm gonna do, Jason the Painter. So I threw together a logo, and I just thought that's the game plan. That's what I'm gonna do. So I made my I don't know how you how do you become something? Like, how do you do it? So I just thought, great, January 1st, that's when I'm going to be a painter. I think it was just January 1st around midday. I just threw a post up, amongst my friends, and with my logo, I just said, all right, I'm a painter now. I do walls, I do ceilings, trim, I'm a painter. And that's how it started.
It's so funny because I started to see you, like, you were using a power sprayer, and it was like, I'm like, oh, he must be doing a project in his house. you know, because this guy's an audio engineer. Like, wow, he's really serious about it. He's got like a power sprayer. What if he borrowed that from a friend and he's got like all this cellophane up and things taped off, and like the next day he's painting cabinets. I'm like, well, he must really be getting into like fixing up an old house or something. It turns out he just changed careers. It didn't bother to, like, I didn't notice. You told your friends, but I'm just like assuming he's got a house he's fixing up.
I think it's funny though how you declare yourself a painter and now you're a painter.
Yeah, it's literally as easy as that. It's literally as easy.
It's incredible. Yeah.
That's kind of like the music business, right? Hey, I'm a producer. I'm a songwriter.
I mean, like, what's the actual qualifier? In the state of Minnesota, you don't need a license to be a painter. So you don't, and honestly, like, I started my business with a couple $100 of seed money.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And I made significantly more than that in 2020 with that couple $100. I mean, that it started with a couple $100, just getting like all the little things that I kind of like need to sort of get going. And it escalated to the point where 6 months later, I'm dropping $2,000 on a boutique, you know, European drywall sander and dust extractor combination. Like, it's nothing, because it's just a useful tool that's helpful to my business. Right. And that sucker has already more than paid for itself.
Yeah, unlike a new compressor for $2,000 that your client doesn't care about.
Don't care, but you just want it so bad. It'll make me feel good to own that compressor. It'll make me feel more legit.
There's totally different. So many parallels. It's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, even the fact they call it a compressor, you know, it's one of those words. It's like, oh, what do you mean compressor? You put compressor in eBay, and all of a sudden, all these like little air compressors come up. Like, no, I mean audio compressor.
Yep.
It's a crazy, man. Does it give you the same buzz creatively as an outlet? Do you feel the same muscles moving?
So much more, actually. So all of the creative things that I liked about mixing and that sort of a thing, I mean, which resonates with so many people. People love that process of mixing a record and getting in and using all your tools and making stuff cool. So I get all of that out of painting. You come in and you're patching holes in walls, which is sort of like your beat detective, right? Like, all the stuff that's a little bit off, let's fill those holes. And then you're going in and you're sanding things, which is like your crossfades. Like, let's make stuff nice and smooth. For our starting point here, and then you're taping things off, putting in your parameters, making nice, like, clean lines on stuff.
There is a lot. You're right. There is a lot that feels like that.
And here's the thing. I don't know how a person gets to this point. Like, if you're in the music business in some capacity and you want to get out, but you don't know how, and it's frustrating, and if it might just be too much of a hurdle. But if you can just get to the attitude point where you're like, I want to do this. I want to be good at this. I want to like this. That's all it takes. Because I know so many people that are like, I hate painting. It's terrible. How do you do that? And I'm just like, just decided I wanted to. Just decided I wanted to like it. Just decided to want to think that it's interesting. And if you just want to think that it's interesting, there's so many things on the internet that can just make it interesting.
You get into the art of it. I totally could see that. The other times you quit audio, were they just like you quit audio for a couple months, or did you quit them for extended period of time? So you said this is the fourth time you quit audio.
Yeah, and I don't even remember the first couple, but there were a couple. The third one was when I was still in Nashville, and I was just frustrated because I don't know. I was just grinding really hard. I was doing, like, you know, cool projects, and there were just too many that fell through. After just a couple of years, I kept observing, like, my God, there are so many very talented musicians, bands, whatever, that couldn't put $200 together to make a record. And then you've got all of these vanity projects that have no business being anywhere near a microphone for any reason whatsoever. They've got 40 grand. Like, somebody make a documentary about vanity projects. That's a whole other thing. That's a documentary I want to see so bad. But it just kind of got frustrating, where it felt like the only records that I were doing that were, like, making money and that, you know, I got to use cool people on it and do a whole thing, were things that I didn't want to show anyone. Like, yes, we got to spend a whole bunch of money on this, but I don't want anybody to hear this. It is oof. And then the projects that, like, you want to work on and you connect with people and they want to work with you, and it's like, well, great. There's just nothing that can, like, make this happen. And it just, the whole process just kept getting frustrating, how records would take months and months and months, and it just drags on, and it's like nobody's really making money. And it's just like, this sucks, man. This sucks. So I pieced out and I ended up working for a CPAP sales company doing phone sales, and I've made money and had benefits, worked 40 hours a week, and that was cool.
Here's another interesting, tell me if I'm right. I imagine it's like that world of contractors is filled with so many deadbeats.
Oh God, yeah.
That it's got to be like those guys who go out in the outer space and then come back after a year, how like they lose 1% a year of their body, their bone mass. You have got to be like the exact opposite. Some guy working out, pumping iron at the center of the earth. Like the comparison from your work ethic and passion, pursuing jobs versus somebody who won't return a phone call. You must have been able to go right in just because you came from such a difficult industry, right? And now you're in this world where if I find a contractor that shows up on time and does good work, I almost don't care what they call.
Tell everybody too,
right? You had to have a great advantage just because of work ethic coming from the music world.
So I don't know what the exact formula is, and I've got a whole bunch of ideas in that realm, but boy, has it worked out. Yeah. And honestly, that was sort of one of the things that I thought about when I was thinking about doing this. Because I'm like painting and like mudding walls and stuff. And it's like, I don't know how to do some of this stuff. But then I just paused for a second. I thought, wait a second. I know the guys that my dad would get when he would hire like mudders and stuff like that. They were not the best and brightest individuals in the world. And if those guys can figure this shit out, I can figure it out. My goodness. And not to just like trash everybody in the trades. There are a lot of very talented, great, good, awesome people, but there absolutely is that like big gap of folks who are just not quite up to snuff as just being sort of humans and being on top of stuff and being a person that somebody in like $1 million home wants to call back or have in their home.
Dude, it's tough. It's rough. Right. You can't get them there to finish a job. You know, so here's what I imagine. If you're an audio engineer, if you're bringing that mindset to the challenge of the work, right, and like the nuance of comparing it to mixing, when you show up, you're into it, right? You're focused. And that's just I have yet to find maybe 1 out of 20, 1 out of 40 contractors that have that. So I would think it'd be a real asset to you coming from this world and going into that world.
It seems to be a thing. There's so much demand for that type of work right now, painting, but like all trades, honestly. Like, whereas in the music industry, it just feels flooded with so many people that you're competing against just for like the little scraps of something.
There's a bunch of Picassos running around.
Yes. And it's
not enough canvas.
And it's like, I get that you guys are all ridiculously talented, but there's just not enough for anybody to really do. In this, it's the opposite. There's so much work. There's way too much work for anybody. And if you can come in and just be better than that bottom 50%, it's like you're in.
Bottom 90%.
You're totally in.
Yeah.
Like it seems to me, sort of what I figured out is that there's maybe two sorts of homeowners that hire this sort of thing. There's the ones who will go online and they'll find the companies and they'll have 3 different people come out and they'll get bids and they'll kind of look at everybody and sort of rate everything and they'll go that route. And then there's the other homeowners that are just like, I don't want to deal with this. I don't want to talk to all these. I don't know who any of these people are. Yeah, they've got reviews, but what does that even mean? Do I got to call this person? And then as soon as they get the name of someone who is recommended to them from somebody else, they're just like, okay, cool. That's my person. I want that person. I don't want to think of other people. That's my person. As long as that person gives me a number that doesn't make my head explode, that's my person, and I'm good.
Well, it's like the music world too, right? I mean, how much of our work is word of mouth? You mix a record, you work with someone, they have a great experience, and then it's like that person calls you. All my records as a kid used to come from like, if I could stay doing records, for every record I do, I'd usually get 1 or 2 records off of that record, the guitar player, the drummer, whoever. And it was all word of mouth, or someone called me saying, hey, so-and-so told me to call you. You know, and that's for a contractor. I guess you could live and die by that. You probably wouldn't have to do any work other than referral work. Have to do a couple good jobs.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty easy. Right now, all of my stuff either comes from referrals or actually like Instagram. Actually, most of my stuff comes from Instagram, and some of that ends up being referrals.
Yeah, I saw a lot of the videos on Facebook. So I imagine you have a YouTube channel.
I don't have a YouTube channel. John Field suggested I get a YouTube channel, and that would be something. I don't know that it's worth that sort of nonsense.
Have you seen Fields? He's back there, right? He moved back home.
Yeah, oh yeah. He's got a cool little space in the creation studio. He's doing really well there.
We got to get him on.
Incredible producer.
Get him on. Yep.
We'd love, maybe you'll be our point of contact with him.
Happy to.
I mixed some records back in the day that he had produced. I think he did the first Flyleaf stuff, if I'm remembering correctly.
I got his info.
Or you know who it was? It was Dropping Daylight. You remember a band called Dropping Daylight from Minneapolis?
It sounds familiar. Probably a little ahead of me.
I think John, that's probably before your time. But I think John had done that record and I mixed it. And it sounded so good. When it came in, I was just like,
he's super.
You don't have to just put the faders up. It sounds great.
Yeah, he does really cool stuff. He's got a great space there that's working out well for him. I'm glad he's back in Minneapolis.
Well, here's the other thing of note. It's like, I found it interesting that maybe your most, well, you did some cool stuff in Nashville, but the Prince thing is a big deal, right?
Yeah.
And look how it came to you. It came to you because you installed a Pro Tools rig, it's not how you think when you're a kid. Like, I'm going to get my big break by installing a Pro Tools rig at a studio, right? But that's really how these things happen. It's so interesting. Have you turned off the switch to the music business, or is there a fifth season for you in the music business?
It's so funny. People say, oh, you'll be back, or they either say it in a way like, you'll be back, or they say like, you can always come back if you want to. You can always do it if you want to. You don't have to feel like you're giving up. Don't feel that way. And I'm just like, I literally don't even think about it ever. I just don't. It doesn't even cross my mind. I have this really cool old RCA tube console that I bought before I bounced that I've wanted to like refurbish, and that is still hanging out, and I still think about maybe tackling that sometime. But otherwise, at no point in the last year have I ever been rolling walls thinking like, man, I just wish I was in there
editing drums
now. Man, I wish I was. It literally doesn't even occur to me. I lent somebody I've lent out my Pro Tools rig. I lent somebody one of my UAD Octos, like with my everything bundle, that he just needed for like a week. He's had it for over a year. I lent my other Octo with my Apollo to another buddy, I don't know, maybe like 10 months ago. And I've said like, I think I might snag that back at some point. I might put a little rig together. It's not even on my radar. I don't even care.
So no fifth season on the schedule, no. But you never know, right? You seem like the kind of guy that you never know. I mean, not for good, not for bad, not for that you should be doing it, you shouldn't be doing it, but this is the way life works.
Well, and that's just for me too. That's not to say that like if it's the whole idea here is getting out of it and pursuing something else. If I wanted to, if it was something that I was still interested in, I have more freedom now to do that than I ever did before.
Great point.
I have so much extra money and I can make time if I want to. If it was something that I was into, there's no reason I couldn't be doing it. I'm just not that into it right now. Maybe someday I will be. I'd like to fix up the RCA, maybe cut some old jazz or soul records or something on that thing, live to 2-track. That'd be cool, but I don't care. See, here's the thing. There's audio industry's fun because you get to geek out about microphones and compressors and preamps and all that kind of stuff. But now I just look at, European sanders and all that, and like fancy brushes and what are like the cool paints. Oh, and the paint sprayers. God, you get into paint sprayers and you got the airless sprayers versus like the HVLP sprayers. And then you've got all this fancy paint that's coming from Italy, like the water-based stuff, the Renners and the Ilvas. And then you've got all the fine paints of Europe, and people are doing these like super mirror finish, like black, glossy things. Like there's so much in the painting world to geek out about. I just do that now.
Yeah, it's like the Fairchild of paint.
Yes, exactly. All of that stuff is there. And like, you've got the audio message boards and you're debating people about stupid things, in audio. The same thing exists for painting, except those guys are brutal. They are so mean. They will make you cry. These contractor message boards, oh my God, they don't hold back at all. They live to rip people apart, and it's hilarious.
Man, I think that it's an amazing story. I am inspired by your honesty. I think that it's like a really legitimate topic that we just don't seem to be, it doesn't seem to be a point of conversation. But Mike, you tell me this, would you rather mow your lawn or would you rather tune vocals?
Probably mow my lawn.
I'm telling you, It doesn't, the thought has crossed my mind that, I don't tune a lot of vocals anymore. I'll usually send them out, and I'll do some stuff during mixing when I have to. If it broaches the sense of common decency, I'll fix it. But, you look at some of this stuff, and when your job starts to become a job, you start to think about, wouldn't it be nice to have the freedom to do it as a passion or to do it as an extracurricular activity? If you're playing guitar and writing so much, I don't find myself picking a guitar up at 9:00 at night and strumming it on the couch, So there is a freedom that happens with it too. Where can people find you if they want to see what you're doing and watch your videos?
The main thing these days is kind of the Instagram that's starting to turn into a fun little thing. I think the handle is Jason Paints MPLS.
Okay.
It's Jason the Painter LLC, and that's where I put my daily stories of sort of happenings and little how-tos and kind of showing people some tricks. And it seems to be kind of a fun thing for like homeowners or people who are thinking about tackling some projects of their own, and people throw out some questions and maybe get inspired by some stuff. And like I said, that's the number one place, because I've got a lot of local followers, and that's the number one place where people hit me up to come paint their house, actually. So that's kind of where it's going on.
We'll put that down in the description. Thank you for hanging out with us. And the one thing that you notice about people that are successful is that they just have a drive and a passion, and regardless of how that manifests itself, I respect it when somebody can have the strength. It's like the equivalent of pushing off of a continent in a wooden boat and going somewhere different. It's the unknown. It's a new horizon for you. So we respect that. And thank you for telling your story. And I'm talking about a topic that we just didn't, I don't know. I don't think any of this conversation has ever happened in pro audio, right? It's such
I don't know.
Well, we just had it. And it was better for you sharing it, so thank you. I mean, you people, we encourage you to find what it is you feel like you're called to do and go do that. Don't live in fear. Don't stay in a job for fear. Don't not try something new because of fear. So, and I'm not telling you to do that. I'm telling myself to do that too. It's like half of whenever you talk is like you're talking to yourself. So that's the goal, and you're doing it. So congratulations, brother. And maybe we'll see you back here in Nashville mixing records.
Maybe
2022. You'll be like the biggest. This interview will be the biggest interview because you'll be like, dude, there was a point where he was out of the business and these guys interviewed him on his podcast, and then he came back and he became the next Mud Lang.
The next Mud Lang. Why would you even say that? Oh my God. That's terrible.
All right, buddy. Well, thank you for hanging out with us.
Thanks very much.
That's it. Signing off from the West Barn. We'll see you next time.